It is a great pleasure to get to announce this next speaker. And when I first saw his name, I actually called him Jan. But upon meeting him and talking with him a few days ago, he told me he goes by Gerit. So please welcome Gerit Brandenburg. Gerit, when I asked him how he likes to be introduced, he said, please call me Gerit. I'm from Merck, the original Merck. But I'm an American, so for me, he's Gerit from the other Merck. He did his PhD in theoretical chemistry at the University of Bonn, and there was some dabbling in academics, including a visiting lectureship at UCL. But he eventually decided to be corrupted by money and joined the original Merck in 2019, where he rapidly rose through the ranks to become head of digital chemistry there, and where he shares his love of Fortran to the world and to the rest of the Merck team. And we're having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, just a typical, I'm not using Zoom that often, so there was a new installation and now I have to give it access to my screen again, and then you need to restart. But it's no worries. I'm there in
all par for the
half a minute or so.
Well, you see, the thing, right, is one of the challenges of becoming in machine learning is that your entire family now thinks that you can solve all of their IT problems. And you have to sort of politely explain to them that I can really only solve them if you give me 10,000 training sets and a few CPUs or GPUs, so I can, run some Bayesian optimization here. Yeah, so that's how are we doing?
Yeah, we're doing good. I now need to be promoted to a panelist again, and then
You've been promoted already. I don't know how much more promotion you can get.
So fair. I'm part of this meeting again, so let me share my slides. Brilliant, and then things are even working. Cool. Yeah, thanks for your patience with me. No, it's the closing of this workshop. You can now relax a little bit. We had some technical talks already, so now we smoothen it out a bit in the last talk. I had a lot of conversations with people here already, and people are skeptical. Am I even allowed to show anything, right? Because apparently we have all the money, but we have all the data and close it behind our doors. I try to not just have some high level blah, but maybe also a little bit of science that we are doing, and at least giving a little bit of flavor of the type of work that we are doing at Merck. I want to talk about digital chemistry at Merck and a bit, always make a point of how we can bring in some synergies from what we're doing in academia, maybe what we're doing in startups, and then at the larger corporations, and how we can actually work together and solving problems of this world, and there are enough of them. So I think it makes sense to jointly work on this. And I already got introduced, so I skip this. My name is Gerit. I just wanted to tell you, to get a little bit of academic credibility that I've worked in science a little bit. Now on the Mac side, we are continuing to do that. And so I have to now, especially as you started that, make the point on who we are. And we're in Finland, right? So we are Merck. We are Merck everywhere. That's highlighted in this beautiful pink color. And in the US and Canada, we go with the branding Emmanuel Merck, Darmstadt, EMD. So I always have to give this disclaimer. But here we are Merck. You can ask me later on who's the original. So there's a US Merck company, and I might give you an slightly biased opinion, so that's the case. We are a company, and I promise I go to a bit of science, but of course I have to start a bit with explaining who we are. But it actually makes sense because this also drives a lot of what we're doing, right? So you might know Merck as a pharma company. And that's also something that we do. So we have a typical pharma portfolio of drugs for some oncology, rare cancers, some MS treatments, fertility, so various disease areas. Hopefully, you haven't been in contact with any of our products on this side, but that's just 1/3 of Merck. So we have two other businesses. One is life science. So I realize that we have a couple of actual chemists here, right? So you might have even ordered chemicals for your labs. Then I'm pretty sure that you've used our Sigma Aldrich catalog to do that. So that's part of our life science portfolio. So kind of the Amazon for chemicals, right? So that's part of us. Don't complain if the shipping is too slow or any of that. I cannot improve that. But at least we have a broad portfolio of materials. That's something you might have realized there. And there, I would bet like half of the people here might have been in contact to some of those products. Like a couple years ago, we had kind of a coronavirus, right? And a lot of you got a vaccine. And if you got the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine, you actually have Merck products in you. So the BioNTech developed this mRNA, right? That's what tells your body to create the spike protein and trigger the immune response. But this mRNA is super fragile. So it wouldn't get into your cell. So it needs a vehicle, and this lipid nanoparticle, so that's the current vehicle, prominent vehicle that's used in that space, that's coming from Merck. So that was just after I started with Merck, and we really had to drastically increase our production of those lipids. So really build new production facilities to cover this demand. So that's part of our life science brand as well. So all these biotech materials helping the biotech industry. And then we have, I just moved it over here, we have electronics as well. So if you have an Apple, Samsung related smartphone, you have Merck materials in your smartphone as well, both in display materials. So Merck actually I would say the early inventor of liquid crystal displays. For a very long time, nobody cared about those, and they just got popular, at least a little bit of a market with these. You remember these Tamagotchis? They had these liquid crystal displays. That was the first market that we had for our liquid crystals, and then the flat screen TVs, and now you have it in all your devices. So that's an area that we have, and a lot of semiconductor production materials. Like edging materials, everything you put on your slurry when you produce semiconductor, polishing materials, planarization materials, kind of all of that. And why I'm telling you a lot of this, I want to showcase a bit that this portfolio of materials we deal with is pretty wide. Right? So from small molecule pharmaceuticals to OLED molecules, to biomolecules, to mRNA encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle. So that's a really wide and broad portfolio. And that means that our methodologies to deal with them have to be as broad. Right. And a couple of key figures here. We're big. Yeah, that's nice. We earn a bit of money. That's true as well. One important piece here is that we still spend a lot of our budget, a substantial part of our budget, in internal R&D. Which I think is a really, really nice and important piece. And it's not true for most of the large corporations anymore. So a lot gets outsourced. We still do a lot of our own research and development. And I'm closely connected to that at Merck, of course, and that's I like it. And we are old. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but 350 something years old. And with that, you could already get some indication on who's the original Merck. But yeah, let's leave it like that. And I want to give you just 3 rough stories of what we are doing. A bit structured in how we are dealing with different type of data. We start very broad and high level, and hopefully in the end we also get a bit more output. And the first point I just want to make, and I know that Taylor talked about that yesterday, day before, yeah, how to take the unstructured data and give some structure to it. And that's quite an important field for us as well, because we have a lot of historic data in various formats, and we have to give some structure into that. And there, I think the only I want to case that yes, we're doing that. And we've been using, and those are the common models, typically general pre-trained transformer models to do various things, to bulk extract from our electronic lab notebooks the relevant data that we need, to, of course, do literature search as well. There, most of our challenges are actually not technical challenges, but more like legal license issues. So we are not allowed to bulk analyze data from the typical publishers. So this is more of a challenge for us than the actual technical implementation. So those things do work, as we've nicely seen yesterday as well. You can do amazing things with them. Often we are not allowed to do that, so we have to restrict ourselves a bit to some smaller spaces and to our internal data most of the times, or to archive type data, which so far somehow our scientists in the lab, they want the real publication and not the archive. I tried to convince them that it's pretty close, but yeah, that's just a reminder that that's an important field, and we work in that as well. And I already lost of time, so I'll jump over that. I had one example where we use these type of methods also to automate kind of analytics you do on your data set, right? Where you can just prompt, oh, please analyze this data set, and you auto-generate Python code and auto-execute it, and then you get your analysis. So these type of just helper things to make your work easier and faster. So those are the things that we deal with these unstructured data. But I want to spend more time on the second and third pieces here. So when we have structured data, we can do great things with them, but often we need to then either with some of these large language type techniques when you extract them, but sometimes we realize, oh, we actually need to generate them on our own. Otherwise, they aren't available. And there's a nice a project that we worked on. I think it started 1 or 2 years ago. And it's now a very specific business problem. So it's coming from our life science colleagues, and they want to help formulation of pharmaceuticals. And often when the plain pharmaceutical crystal does not have the properties that you want it to have, like it's not soluble enough, something like this, you try to build a co-crystal that has better properties. So you match your pharmaceutical molecule with a coformer, build a co-crystal, and that has nicer properties. So that's a very common thing in pharmaceutical formulation that you want to do. But typically you then need to know, is it even possible to form a co-crystal? What is the right coformer that I need to use to form this co-crystal? And typically you want to do that quickly and not spend weeks or months on this formulation issue. And we thought this should be an easy classification task, right? I just have a list of coformers that are available. This is quite restricted because you want to then orally apply them. So there are a lot of toxic the kind of constraints on what you're even allowed to use. So it's a finite list basically, and then you just throw your API and your coformer together, and you do a classification model, and you tell me yes, it's a co-crystal, yes or no. And there's public data out there. And we've even seen publications that people have done something like that. And we say, yeah, sure, we can do that as well, right? And we tried it with the public data, and it actually did not work at all. So any cross validation that we've been doing on this data really did not work at all. And I think the friendly thing to say there is that the public data that is out there was very heterogeneous, and just not up to the task we're doing here. So we could have said, okay, it's not working, so we move on. But it was something that our life science colleagues were actually interested in. They actually wanted to make this formulation better, faster, and offer that as a service to not just our internal colleagues, but also to external customers. So they said, okay, then we need to, that's probably, I stick with this slide, there's someone missing. We need to actually generate our own data. And we already heard a lot of how to do smart picking of what is the next data point that I need, and that's actually what we did here, kind of an active learning loop. And with just just a little bit of, let's say, hand design features that go in there, because those are all small molecules. It's pretty straightforward to generate some quantum-based featurization. And the standard workflow is to, I mean, you have your pool of structure, you generate your 3D conformation. So you do a conformer search, you have an ensemble of molecular conformers, and then on top of that, you generate some quantum-based features and descriptors of this. And this you put into your model and then do your classification. And also in this feature space, you do your active learning, where you try to diversify kind of the new type of experiments that you're doing. And that's kind of this type of workflow that we do. You see here, was it a PCA map or UMap? Probably PCA, where you see kind of the different molecules kind of on that map, how they cluster. So it also chemically makes a bit of sense how together. And then this active learning loop was running for, I think, more than half a year to a year, actually with an external CRO, where every kind of weekly we did an update of regards to new experiments in. We ran our active learning loop and synced back kind of the list of next experiments that we needed. And that was running then for quite some time. So also quite some budget and effort going into that. But what we could see is that this really drastically improved our model performance as it should. But it's nice to see that it's actually doing this. And then what comes out of that, and that's now more of a corporate slide again, is an actual new model. So this MPredict model based on, and we gathered just a few thousand new data points. That's then enough when you kind of gather them in a smart way. And this is not actually working, so we can do this classification. We've built a service on top. And now they can do this co-crystal formulation in less than a business week for an external customer. So really a rapid turnover time enabled by this digital predictor, and it's really just a classification, but by this predictor that we built here. And I always like to show kind of the people who've actually been working on that. So from our team, that was Marco and Martin, and then a couple of the life science colleagues more working on the experimental side. And you can book that service if you want. I don't know if you need that, but yeah, you also find co-crystal prediction. Merck, you'll find the right link, or that's the QR code over there. But I like this project because we also have our internal people, of course, for some individual project. But this is an actual new product that was launched November last year that is only enabled due to our digital tools that we contribute. And we have a couple of those examples where we enable new businesses, new products that we can launch because of our algorithms and our toolings, which is, I think, a nice direct impact that we can show. But I already talked a little bit on, we have done active learning, and I have said nothing about what it actually was. I know we had a couple of talks on these Bayesian optimization loops already, but I want to focus a bit more time on how we deal with this data regimes with low or no data. And that's more common for us in our project than you might think. So somehow I got the vibe the past days. We have all the data. And show me, please. I would like to have that. So often we are actually in this regime, and that's also a space where we worked on some. I'll show you later some open projects, so it's easier for me to talk about this. All right. Maybe I don't need to make the case that optimization problems are everywhere. We've talked here during that conference already about this. But maybe to make that even broader than the materials discovery problems that we've talked about already during this workshop, there are more examples, right? When you do just mathematical modeling and you have parameter in that's an optimization problem that's related. Sometimes it's we do also digital twins for bioreactors, and there you have physical equations, how things are happening, but always with some free parameters that you need to fix. So these type of model parameters occur everywhere. We already talked about chemical reactions. Bartosz has talked a lot about optimizing this, but then general experimental design setups. We heard just in the last talk about formulation challenges, and we do a lot in our life science business. We generate new chemicals, new excipients, new additives. So this is a lot related to formulation challenges that are optimization problems. But then also more generally process design, the form of a reactor, and how the shapes impact my production. So those are all optimization problems, and basically what they connect is I have a set of parameters that I hopefully have under control, more or less, to some degree, and I have a set of targets, right? And those can be multiple targets, of course, typical reaction yield, but also cost of your materials, or whatever is relevant for you, right? And then I don't have an analytic kind of connector between those two. Otherwise, the problem is solved, right? But often problems are quite complex, so it's tough to make this direct connection here. So yeah, what can we do there? And maybe just as a broad overview, probably I'd tell is this, of course we can work with our intuition, and that it's actually that's not a bad approach, and that has been working for decades quite well. But maybe we can get a little bit better, especially when we have many parameters, when you have multiple targets in a high dimensional space. At least my brain is not up for the task. And what typically humans fall back to is a one parameter at a time optimization, right? You try to, and that's what you do in your head. Oh, I fix all but one of my parameters. What's happening when I just move one? And try to understand a bit those relations. But this is and if you have to do that with all of those parameters, that's a very ineffective way to kind of scan yours and probe your space. It's good for our understanding, and therefore in my head I often do that, but it's really not ideal to most effectively gather your data. Yeah, then we already heard a bit about classical DOE. That's coming more from the engineering realms, but it's way more systematic. That's great. You have a simple model, you have a fixed design space, and you know exactly which type of points you need to probe, and then you have kind of a multilinear model out of that. And Carsten already left, right? So I wanted to challenge him. That's still a reasonable approach. And I actually have a couple of backup slides where I quickly compared classical DOE to what we are doing, and it's really not looking good. But we can look into that later a little bit. But there are also more general problems, right? It's not really then integrated in your experimentation cascade. The design of your experiments is fixed from the beginning. Right, you do your fixed design, and then you have to follow that. And while your data acquisition, you might realize, oh, maybe there are other spaces that are relevant and interesting, and that's really not adaptive to that at all. And then when you have a high cardinality of some categorical parameters, so that sounds complicated, but if you have like categories like chemicals, so a range of solvents that you want to probe, with classical DOE, you have to probe all of those, right? There's no way to interpolate in between them. And you have a problem when you want to use prior data. There's no clear way how to do that in classical DOE. But it's still useful, right? I don't know what to claim that's at, but Bayesian optimization has a lot of benefits. So you don't need to have a specific equation that's fixed. You can include prior data. And thanks to this machine learning model in the background, there are a lot of nice add-ons that you can build into that. And I want to highlight a couple of those that we've been working on. I already talked a little bit about this. We work in all of those data regimes, and there are good solutions or good approaches in all of those. So we also work with situations where we have no data. That's fine, and we also don't really want to gather data, and then you do some first principles modeling, right? And sometimes that's very useful and working out very well. Typically, I like to show some examples for our display department where it's about absorption spectrum of OLED molecules, and that's something we can just simulate, and it's not too hard. I mean, OLED molecules have a couple of hundred atoms, but it's okay with some linear response DFT that's working brilliantly, and you can just do a first principle modeling of all of that. You don't need machine learning, and that's good and fine, and then you should do that. Then there are regimes where you have a lot of data. And sometimes we have that as well. So for instance, we have some kind of medical imaging of cells, and we want to identify that a cancer cell. So there we have a lot of data. So that's really more in the, let's say, deep learning side of those things. And there you can do really good things that with modern deep learning architectures as well. But most of the times we are in this low to no data regime where we have a new product, like a new catalyst or a new slurry material for etching on semiconductor surfaces, where you have gathered a couple of data points of some initial experiment, but really not a lot. And those are highly specialized experiments. So typically, there's no direct automated platform that you can just run. So we really often have more on the dozens of data points, and we still want to be helpful, right? And at the same time, often those processes are incredibly complicated. These semiconductor processes where you have several layers of different materials, then you throw in a slurry of additives and polish it, and something is happening on the surface. It's really tough to do a first principle analysis of that, especially if you not just want to analyze one specific system that you already know, but if you want to do a screening of materials to find new ones, that's really tough. So we still need to do a bit of data learning here, but in the low data regime. So that's kind of in my case. A lot of problems that we do are there, and that's why we do a lot of these Bayesian optimization loops. And just as a sketch how this works, of course, so we start with maybe some data. I start with the end. That's weird. Yeah. So we start sometimes with no data, sometimes with some data. That's okay. And the good thing is when we have some data of a related experiment, we can do a transfer learning to our current campaign. And sometimes you have done a DOE before, that's fine, and then you take just this data in and start with your Bayesian optimization. And then it doesn't really, for this framework, doesn't really matter if it's an automatic lab or if it's a human doing the experiment, right? But you do your experiments. You identify kind of the result, and then there's always kind of one important piece that we've worked on a bit, but it's actually not trivial, kind of the deciding when to stop. There are some natural stopping criteria like yield of a reaction when you got to 100% and you stop, sure. But what are you doing when you don't get to your ideal limit? You stop when your budget is over, when your time is over, but ideally you would want to have some better stops, right? Some estimator. What is the likelihood that I can still improve my objective function to a certain percentage in the next number of campaigns? And one can try to do some of those estimators, but they work okay, but not really great. So I mean, you have some great academic crowd here, right? So if you have really good ideas for that, I would love to hear them, because that's still a challenge. And then, of course, we give it to our models, the new data points we build. And most of the models that we build are Gaussian models. We can include other frameworks as well, but Gaussian process here seem to work fine. So we update our model and then kind of suggest a new set of experiments, a new batch of experiments. And you might ask, and that's now a list with a lot of text, you might ask, yeah, Bayesian optimization, you've heard tons of people talk about that, so there should always be tons of solutions, how to do that. And there are also some commercial software providers that give you DOE solutions, and some now tell you, oh, we can also do Bayesian optimization. We tested, and that's now, our tests are now 2 years ago probably. We tested what was out there, and none of them really solved our solutions. And that was a better decision. Okay, we have to build a good Bayesian optimization framework internally. To really cover all of the different needs and constraints that we needed and we had. And that's what we did. So it's the Bayesian backend baby. That's our protocol. So our scientists love that. So it's in the background, to be honest, it's blowtorch, like what everyone is using. But the important pieces are the add-ons around it. So how to actually make it usable in practice. And there are a couple of things that we have in here that I think are great and really helpful and not common across all of those. So one is just to give it a smart chemical encoding, right? I already mentioned, oh, you have a list of solvent molecule or list of additives. It should not just be a number. It shouldn't be a one-hot encoding, but probably something smarter. So we automatically give it some chemical encodings. So some fingerprints sometimes are fine or moderate. We do some smarter variants as well, but you should automatically, when you have a chemical in your space, you should optimize in a decent latent space. And we can do all types of custom parameter encodings, of course. Then we enable all type of surrogate models, but to be honest, typically the Gaussian process is fine. We can mix continuous and integer parameter space, discrete parameter space, categorical parameter space, and all mixtures of those. And a very nice feature is that we can actually learn from previous data. So if you have a campaign that has been similar, you can transfer this data and warm start your new campaign. So we have a transfer learning algorithm in there. So that's, I think, a really nice hack. And something, and I'm sure all of you are great coders and document everything you do. But something that we've realized whenever we try to use academic codes, we see a great Nature paper and we try to clone the GitHub and work with it. And like 99% of the time, it's impossible. And so we really try to build something that's proper documented. It's fully back tested, and it's a really robust code base. And that's of course important for us because we want to use it in productive environments, right? So it really has to be robust and stable. So a lot of great features. And that's the GitHub, and the nice thing is it's now really easy to use. So the right side, it's probably a bit too small, but that's basically everything you need to do to run a campaign to optimize your synthesis. Those are all the lines, nothing else you need to add there. And just to show you that it works, that's a typical example of a campaign reaction, and that's just showing that the encoding does matter. So I'll show you kind of the experiments that we are doing and the yield. And I want to maximize the yield, so the curve should grow as fast as possible. And when you use, and this is now all done with Baby, when you use chemical encodings, you're way faster than a one-hot encoding. And of course, a random baseline is not useful. And something, and that looks like a simple reaction, but you have 2,000 possible combinations, and in like 17 trials, we find the optimum. So it's something where we're really fast, and there are not a lot of high yield examples in there. And that's just to show that vendors are not that good, and Optuna is also not good for that, which is very popular, more for hyperparameter optimization of neural nets, and now people use that generally for Bayesian optimization, but Optuna is for these type of spaces really not good. And here I want to show just very quickly another example where this works. So that's optimization of a container. And they could kind of encode the topology of this container. And they already had a couple of trials and gave that to us as a previous data. We did a transfer learning and then a campaign to help optimize this reaction container. And we actually find container designs that are significantly better than the previous ones. Here it's something that I cannot show you because those are now getting produced and patented. But you really find new ideas with these type of designs, and something that the human intuition wouldn't go to, which I think is a nice non-chemical reaction example that Bayesian optimization actually does help. Yeah, so that's just did help, and also kind of the feedback is really we find really new things, and maybe something to also show something like a self-driving lab, a very simple one. So the nice thing is, so there's a flow chemistry example. A nice thing with flow chemistry is the only thing you need to control are your pumps that get in the chemicals. Then we have a reaction tube where we can control the temperature and pressure, and we just need the output point. Here I think it's just an LR to probe how much of our product this was. And the challenge here was a reaction with a product and with a impurity, and we want to maximize the product and minimize the impurity, and that's the bottom line of those curves. And I hope that blue is what we want to maximize and orange what we want to minimize, but I think it's I think it's correct. And this is running fully autonomously, right? So it's controlled by a baby that's deciding on the experimental setup, reading the output, and there's no human in the loop whatsoever. So that's really running autonomously, and we can very quickly optimize this type of reaction in these type of lab setups. And what I was most grateful for was that our colleagues trusted us, that they started those experiments, went home, and the next day everything was optimized. Nothing exploded, so there was some kind of trust level. So I think that's a great example. And of course, there are kind of checks, pressure checks, that if the pressure would go out of limits, things would shut down. And I think what's here important is this is open source. So all of this framework that we built there, we decided a year ago that we fully open source it under a non-restrictive license, so we can use it, can commercialize it, do whatever they want. Ideally, you develop great things and merge them back, and everyone has something from it. But I think this is a nice platform where we can actually work together and move the field forward together in a nice framework. We put some effort into keeping the code base robust. But yeah, new contributions are very, very much welcome here. And again, I want to show you, of course, the team. So those are kind of some of the developers, and it's really a very nice there as well that it's development is across Merck. So we have several developers in all our businesses who contribute to that. We have now 60 different material projects that use this as a framework to run their campaigns. I think last year we had 50,000 experiments suggested with this type of framework. So it's really used, and this makes it really robust because we get problems all the time from our colleagues. But it's good, right? Because then we improve and we fix those things. So right now, I think this is a really nice framework. And with this, I also come to my end. So understand the data you have, use the tools that we have these days to bulk extract data, to structurize it, right? Use them. Select the right digital tool for what you're doing. Sometimes it's a first principle modeling, sometimes it's not. And for us, it's always, we also in the end want to have an impact, right? So we don't do it just for fun, have fun with it, but still, in the end, we really want to create new materials, new products, help our processes. So really also think where can you make the most impact? And yeah, with that, hopefully I showed you some interesting pieces, nothing too deep serious, so it's slowly fading off for today. And yeah, thanks that so much, stick around, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Garrett. What an engaging talk. And I know of Baby, but I didn't know that Merck had invested so deeply into Hello?
Yeah.
The mic should be on now. I didn't know Merck had invested so deeply into open source. It's always very comforting to hear. Are there any questions for Garrett?
I think there's a mic coming.
Hi, thank you for the very nice talk. So, as someone, I'm also now working on developing this mixed hybrid spaces for especially GPs. So, uh, have you done any like benchmarks? I saw you showed some plots there on the convergence or the optimization, but benchmark these mixed space problems against other maybe state-of-the-art models or stuff from literature, because that's something that I'm quite interested in.
So it depends a bit on what you mean with other state-of-the-art models. Yes, we have done some benchmarking for us more against the typical vendors that we use, where we cannot disclose who that is and what exactly the strategy is. But yes, there we have done some benchmarking and we stick with our framework. And I would be fine if something else is out there that's better. We switch to that, right? That's really okay. But so far our setup seemed to be working most robustly compared to those suggestions. I'm not sure what you mean with other framework. What we don't do is to whenever there's a new academic algorithm out there that we run our tests and our benchmarks, because that's an effort that there needs to be incentive for us to do that, right? So it's more the other way around. If we see that others showed, oh, there is something that works better than this type of framework, then we look into that a bit more closely. But if you have a very specific methodology that you would like to see, I can probably answer a bit more specifically. But it's more we do that, we test that, but there needs to be some incentive. So ideally, someone has shown that their approach is better than what we are doing.
Thank you, that's fine.
Yeah.
Second question.
Yeah, thank you for the insightful talk. I have a question about using supercomputers. So I saw a very nice example. You showed that you use sometimes first principles calculations to generate data.
Yes.
And in academia, we sometimes need to run a lot of floating point operations, not just with GPUs, but with CPUs, with quantum chemistry. And sometimes we just cannot live without supercomputers. So my question to you is, do you use supercomputers? Can you live without them? And the question is, if in any case you don't use them heavily right now, do you see a benefit from like this growth of supercomputers and bringing a lot of first principles data and computations to the loop? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Of course, the right infrastructure to do what you want to do is really important, and it's coming from both sides, right? When you have a lot of infrastructure, you probably go a bit more into also deploying that. Sometimes it's good to not have too much compute power, because one of my postdoc projects, I had an Insight grant and was on Summit, so the largest US supercomputer at that time. And I spent an incredibly amount of CPU and GPU time to get one number, and in the end, I realized it wasn't a good number. So sometimes it's good to be a bit restricted and spend your efforts right. But on the resources we have, yes, we have high performance compute facilities. A bit status today is it's a bit fractured throughout Merck. Which is annoying. And actually, within our team, we now facilitate it and combine it and have a one Merck supercomputer that will be launched in August. Joshua from my team is responsible for that, so that will work, I hope. So we'll have facilities compared to what you see from NVIDIA or from other really big companies that are more in the software algorithm domain. I would say we don't have a lot, but let's say comparable to your university facilities. And it's a mixture of modern GPUs, of course. So we have a couple of A100 cards, or we get new H100s kind of in the new cluster. So kind of really big GPU node where we can also train decently large models. So we don't train any GPT-3, 4 type models, so that's a bit out of realm. But we can kind of small type of models we can train. But we also have CPU power, so we do the classical quantum chemical calculation. So that's something we do as well. And I now was focused a bit on the Bayesian optimization also because it fits kind of what we're doing here in this workshop. But we do a lot of the classical computational modeling as well. And there you need these compute facilities. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for your interesting talk. And because the name of this framework is called Baby, right?
Yes.
And I, as a commercialized platform or something, I actually would be very happy to see the process like developing into a grown up. And I would like to see a feature like, because this is machine learning for material design. So have you ever had like a conceptualization for real automated flow for from like we give you this kind of ingredients and the platform can provide you like how to synthesize all of things, and if they tried some ingredients and maybe from the process they find, okay, this way doesn't work, maybe we should switch to other ingredients like this. Have you ever had this kind of conceptualization?
Yeah, thanks for making kind of, let's say, the question a bit broader and also makes sense. So for the Bayesian backend, very specifically, so that's really designed as a framework for Bayesian design, Bayesian optimization. And in that sense, it's dealing with a fixed design space that you provide in the beginning, right? And that's kind of the concept of Bayesian optimization. You have your fixed design space, and within this design space, you can do a lot of clever things. So what you are going to say is, I want to back couple, maybe changing the design space, going to other areas, and that's something we do in individual projects, but not in a generalized framework, because that's also a tough thing to do generally in the same framework. So I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do that within Baby, but it's definitely a worthwhile thing and something we have to do in individual projects. We of course couple those things to synthesis routes. I mean, you've Bartosz made some advertisement for our Cynthia software, right? So we have, of course, software that can do a retrosynthesis that tells you a path that you should do, and then within this path you can do an optimization of the other parameters. So we do these type of combinations, but that's then not part of the Bayesian optimization framework, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I think it'll be very interesting to see the grown up, like the next version.
Yeah, there are always next versions. So we just had the Pareto optimization kind of released. So yeah, we work on that. And that's one of the idea, and also what I kind of promised our executives, that this is not a Merck only show. That the idea of open sourcing this is, of course, that kind of there are community contributions. So whenever it tells me, oh, I would like to have this and this feature, that would be cool, my typical answer is yes, go ahead and work on it, and then we see how to merge that back in. And we typically help with that, but we cannot do all of that ourselves. We prioritize, and on that I also have to be honest, our own development is prioritized on our needs, right? But we share it, which I think is a nice thing.
Thank you again, Gerit. And I wanted to ask, yeah, it's right close. It's just sometimes it cuts off. I wanted to ask, not many companies have invested so hard in machine learning, computation, and using it so much in product development. And this is clearly a big employer, potentially a good employer for the people in this room, right? So why do you like working in Merck? Why would you recommend Merck?
I did not yet tell you that I like working there, right? But it's maybe you can tell from from my manners here, and I can tell you that I've been there since 2019. And I'm not shy of moving somewhere else, so there are reasons for me to stay there. It's a decent place. So what I like of, and I haven't talked a lot about org structures because that's more like a company industry type of thing, but we have a very nice setup of a science and technology office. So that's a global science and tech office that's directly reporting to our CEO. So we are very prominently set up, which gives us a lot of freedom, a lot of trust that we, and she, so Belen, our CEO, basically dumps money into the science and tech office, and we can do with it more or less whatever we want. In the end, ideally we help Merck, but it's not that she tells us it has to be this and that direction. And this gives us a lot of room, a lot of flexibility to actually go for those algorithms, those technologies, and for us more the digital machine learning, computational type of methodologies that we can try those out. And that makes it exciting to work there, right? Because you can bring in your own idea. So there's a lot of trust. So nobody tells me what should be the next product we should work on. The same with this Bayesian design. We just saw, there are a lot of challenges across Merck that we want to work on those. We had great scientists with expertise in doing that, so we built it. And I think that makes it worthwhile there, right? You can bring in your expertise. You can actually own a challenge, own the problem, move that forward. So that for me is a brilliant setup. So a lot of positive things, but I'm honestly happy there, right? I mean, that's why I'm still there, why I stick around there. There are other areas across the companies where I would be less happy, but there are also other companies where I know the setup is great. So it really, I always try to not make this academia left industry-wide type of decision. There's a lot of room in between how you can work, and I'm here, right? So and Merck doesn't profit directly from it, I guess. But still, it's something that's important to me, that we are connected to the scientific community, that we also learn in both directions. What are the current trends? Is there something useful for both sides? And I think that make it nice, and it's not the left or right type of decision. Whatever decisions the PhD graduates here have to be, yeah. Yeah.
Any last questions?
Last question is always a challenge, yeah.
With that, we can thank Gerit once again for fantastic close.
Thank you.
And before you go, I'm just here to remind you to please sign the demon cost form. Should you, Milica has it. If you need to, you must sign it. If you don't need to, do not sign it. There's no place for you to sign. It's all very binary. Excellent. And with that, it's time for the close. Oh, perfect. Can I put my laptop there? Thank you. Please excuse while I do some finagling. Oh.
There should be. So mathematically, there has to be a rotation where it's not wiggling.
So Gerit, why does it take so long for me to get my chemicals from Sigma? I'm still waiting for mom chloride. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for staying until the very end of the conference. It really means a lot to us that you've, over the past 4 days, have showed up, been enthusiastic, and your support for machine learning and for materials discovery, and maybe a little bit for chemistry. Shock of all shocks. This conference was originally started by Milica and Patrick in 2017, and they have done a fantastic job since the start. If you know anything about Milica and Patrick, or you know that diversity. Oops, that's not how that's supposed to go. Do I have to click on it? There we go. Diversity plays a huge role in the lives of Finnish people, and it's a big part for Milica and Patrick. And I know that as academics, we maybe occasionally play lip service, but we truly actually love diversity, especially when we talk about diversity of ideas and diversity of thinking and thoughts and principles. And I think that was so beautiful today's session as well as throughout the conference. This is not working for me. Okay. These are some of the topics that were covered, big topics, featureization. We saw a lot about machine learning potentials, universal MLIPs, delta models. Active learning was a very active contributor in the conference. Well, space exploration, we saw a little bit of generative AI and all that. But this is really just my take. These are the things that I thought were really big, right? Throughout the course of the conference, I mean, so much more what could be found. If there was something that you were interested in machine learning or materials science, there was a space for you. You were able to hear about that. And I think that's one of the amazing things about these types of workshops and these types of conferences. It's just how diverse the field is. And that's reflected in the diversity of our speakers' locations and where they come from. This was obviously a hybrid event, so we had lots of people here in person. We also had some people watching from Zoom. And I just want to point out just much across the particularly northern hemisphere we represented. Obviously, the big hitters, US, UK, China, where there's a lot for things like this are always well represented, but we have a lot in Europe, especially in sort of Central Europe. We have some from India. We even have one from Ethiopia. So lots of diversity here within our population, which is always something that we wish to encourage within the sciences as well. We had about 100 in-person, just under 100 in-person participants. And very excitingly, 58% contributed. So that was very, very good. 15% of those contributions were talks, which we've just had the last of. And we had 21% women as part of our conference, which I understand is a far cry from the equity of 50%. But I'm sure some of the PIs in the room can speak to this, and I can certainly speak to this. When I started going to conferences, you're pretty lucky to have 1 or 2 women in a conference. So over 1 in 5 is a nice step forward. But of course, and I say this to the entire delegation, it's our responsibility to keep the inclusivity of science and diversity of science, not just in diversity of ideas, but in diversity of people moving forward. No matter how passionate you are about science, passion doesn't pay the bills. So we are very grateful for our sponsors of this event, which are CCAM, FCAI, the Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence, and the Demon Cost Center, which if you are funded through, you should sign the Demon Cost Center form. Final reminder. And of course, thank you to Aalto University for their generous allowance of this beautiful space, as well as Mordor. The poster boards, all of the tech equipment is from Aalto University, and for welcoming us here to this absolute lovely space. But money doesn't actually, it's just money until someone actually does something with it. And it's the people that really make this conference a success. And I'd like to acknowledge them now. These are some of the unsung heroes of this conference. And 2 of them, interestingly, I don't think I've ever been photographed before because it was very difficult to find photographs of you guys. But these are the helpers. You've seen them running around. They've been running mics. They've been doing the recordings. They've been handling a lot of the technical aspects on things. They've been coming in early every day and staying late every evening to clean up. They are absolutely the workhorse behind this conference. If we could please give them a huge round of applause for all the work that they've done. And then, of course, my co-organizer, all of these wonderful people are in the groups of my co-organizers, Milica and Patrick. I have one singular PhD student who is currently 1 month old, so I felt that she was probably best spent in the lab. Milica and Patrick, who have been organizing a variation of this conference for a better part of a decade, really owe so much. We all owe them such a huge debt of gratitude. I was just a pretty face. I did nothing. Realistically, right? If you get an email from Milica or Patrick saying we'd love to have you at this conference, it holds so much more weight. Because of their efforts, we have been able to make this such an amazing, informative, and world-class conference on truly a shoestring budget. So thank you, Milita and Patrick. And then finally, the people that have really done the work that I'm sure everyone knows. Tomasz, Pascal, and Bernadette. Is Bernadette here? No. This conference would not exist without these three wonderful people. Tomasz and Pascal, you know, you've been corresponding with them. They were in charge of the abstract booklet. They were in charge of the registration. They were in charge of, you know, harassing all of you for abstracts, telling you about deadlines. I mean, it's amazing how much work that they've put into it. And you know, going forward, they will be organizing experts, and Bernadette for all of her help in the IT side, in the catering side. I'm sure all of us have appreciated the wonderful food that's always appeared, mostly on time, and how seamless everything has been. Thank you so much, Tomasz, Pascal, Bernadette. And you may think that's it, but there's actually one more set of people that really make this conference a reality. And I'm going to be a little bit corny here, but I'm American, so I'm allowed to do it. And it's all of you guys. Because truthfully, as you may have guessed, I'm not a material scientist. I've never claimed to be a material scientist. I am an organic chemist. I exist very much on the outskirts of material science. And I can honestly say this is the favorite conference I've ever been to. And it's because all of you have been such amazing participants. You've been so engaged. You've asked such great questions. You've given such thought-provoking presentations. Thank you all. Thank you so much. And before we head out, remember to turn in your lanyard and sign the demon cost form. But I wanted to end not so much with a thank you, but with a directive to all of you. And because this is technically a general conference, I thought it was only fair to end with a poem that Claude, LLM Claude, and I co-wrote. From crystals to polymers, materials new, ML4MD showed us what to do. If you're ready for more models, updates, and tricks, come back again in 2026. Go catch your plane!